so much. Fantastic. Gosh, it's fun to be here. Thank you so much. The energy in the room was great. I got in pretty late last night, a delayed flight for those of you who have flown in. This is not unusual for our summer. And I was just coming up to the reception as it was ending, and it was still buzzing. It was still buzzing. It was really, really exciting. And again, I just want to thank you, Lauren, for your vision, for reimagining how designers can learn to be leaders, how they can learn from each other in this cohort model, and come together to model a new way of both getting inspired and also learning how to apply new practices the next day. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. I flew in, as I said yesterday, from the Bay Area. But what's so exciting for me to be part of LeadCon, and Andrew didn't mention this in his bio, but this is my hometown. I am from Philadelphia. I will always be from Philadelphia. I was thrilled last night in the car when I passed the first Eagles preseason game. Very exciting. Very exciting. And I just want to say I've been a fan even before they won the Super Bowl. So that was really exciting. And it's particularly exciting for me to be here at this moment in Philadelphia because it gave me an opportunity to invite two of the most influential designers in my life that are joining me here today. So I would love for you all to also welcome Dr. Michael Kay, who is my father and has literally given thousands of people the ability to see the world more clearly as one of the foremost ophthalmologists here in Philadelphia. So I want to thank you because we know, as Julie said, if we cannot see the world clearly, then everything else falls off from there. So thank you for that. And I also want to thank Dr. Bonnie Kay for being here, my beloved mother, who models lifelong learning and is truly one of the most generous and generative thinkers and conversationalists I've ever met. And so it's truly a fortune for me to have her as my learning partner through life. And I'm so glad that you are here. So thank you for modeling great design and for being here. As Andrew said, I've spent the bulk of my career helping designers think of themselves as leaders. I first started off this work in a practice called scenario planning, which is literally having conversations about the future, multiple futures, already challenging conventional wisdom that there's one future that you thought of that's hidden in your strategic plan. It is not. And we know that. So the ability to build skills to think about alternative possibilities is one that's deeply steeped in design practice. And about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to move my career from being primarily a scenario planner and strategist to being an educator of design. And I started that work at the Design MBA program housed at the California College of Arts. Any alum in the house? I know Julie is one. But imagine this, 100-year-old art and design school, not unlike where we are right now, that decides it is going to build a new kind of business school that I've affectionately called Mastering Business Ambiguity. Because we know that the world is teeing up new kinds of problems that we cannot solve with just linear methods. So we actually need to not just allow the creative process to come into traditional business thinking, we need to foster it. And what's so exciting about the Design MBA program is that every semester the students take a studio class where they're working on their creative skills real time on behalf of a real project that grows, so that when they graduate, they're exactly the kind of talent and leaders that companies are looking for, because they're able to think and do the same day, the same hour. That's what they do. They think and do. I've spent time working at Stanford D School, where I'll be joining there in the fall as a designer in residence, focused on the adjacencies with futures thinking, and the last 2 years at an organization called Singularity University, which is focused on teaching global executives about emerging technologies so that they can better ride the wave of where exponential tech is going and design the futures that we want to see. So I'm passionate about this topic, and I think you're passionate about this topic because you came here today. But we know leadership is actually not an abstract idea. It actually starts from within. So I'm going to start with a little quiz. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's wake us up. I want to hear, and I want you to pause and think about what is your view of the future. And I'm going to give you 2 questions to think about, and we're going to have a conversation about it. So the first question I want you to think about is, do you believe that the future is A, primarily predetermined, meaning we're on a trajectory. Tomorrow's going to be some version of today. We're still going to have the political systems that we have. We're still going to have these big companies. But in general, yes, it might deviate, but for the most part, it's predetermined. So that would be A. B, you believe that the future is emergent. Anything can happen. We don't quite know. And that's what's interesting about it. So think in your head, where do you lean? These are not absolutes. These are leanings. A, predetermined. B, more emergent. I want to test that you're listening. Quick show of hands. A in the house? A few? B. Okay, excellent. No judgment, just A or B. The second question I want to layer on is, who influences the future? Is it primarily individual actors that make choices that have profound and meaningful effects on our future? Perhaps it's someone like Elon Musk, for example, that makes choices that creates new enterprises, or you and the work that you do. Or do you primarily believe that external forces dictate the future? And by that I mean outside of individuals. These could be organizations, these could be movements, these could be external trends like what's happening in our climate. So what primarily influences the future? Again, these are leanings. You're probably somewhere in the middle, but pick one. C, individual agency. D, more external factors. So let's hear show of hands for C, individual agency. Excellent. And D, external forces. Okay, interesting. We're half and half. Great. So I want you, this is the tricky part. You remember your first letter? Yeah? Now I'm going to ask you to combine it with your second letter. Is that okay? Just 2 letters. So you're an AC, you're a BD, you're one of those. What's interesting, if you plot these in a 2x2, you could start to see some interesting patterns emerge about our view towards the future, which again, we don't often talk about, but it's embedded in the leadership choices that we make. And as Julie said, our ambition, how we see ourselves. And you could start to see, for example, that those that believe the future is primarily predetermined, but they believe in individual agency, I call those future stewards. So that's, you're working with a large company, you didn't set the vision, but you're on the path and you're going to do your best job to bring that path forward with your individual choices. For those that believe that the world is primarily predetermined and there are external forces that are greater than any individual actor, these I call future wanderers. So they're not quite pioneering new paths, but they are certainly accepting the future as they come. The third category around folks that believe that the future is actually emergent, but it's based on external factors, I call those future explorers. So they're willing and they understand that the future, that tomorrow may be meaningfully different than today, but they're equipped with tools, bushwhacking through new territory, creating new maps. And finally, the upper right that I get very excited about is those that believe they have individual agency in the world and they are not afraid of the emergent forces. Those I call future shapers. Those are the ones that take a look at the complexity around us, they believe in their choices and the discipline and the practice that they've built in order to make positive choices that affect others. And as you can imagine, this is where I see you. As designers, we have the ability to notice the world around us in very different ways and make choices that maybe at the first set, the offset, may not feel comfortable, but to bring those ideas to life. And this is why I am so passionate about my work, to help codify, define, teach, and help others learn the leadership practices of design in order to make our world a better place. I think there is no better profession than what you are all doing in order to help be the future shaper of the world we want to be a part of. As Andrew said, we live in unprecedented times, right? A world filled with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This VUCA world that's teeing up all kinds of wicked challenges. Challenges that serve up more unknowns and increasingly more unknown unknowns. Interestingly enough, as we become flatter, more connected, more transparent, we become more aware of all the things that we don't know and the consequences of that. And so for many of us, we are living in a state of worry, of anxiety, that we don't quite know how to handle all of the new things that seem to be coming our way faster and more furiously. But designers are more comfortable with ambiguity. They know that while we necessarily can't solve all these, it doesn't mean that we need to be at the mercy of these kinds of problems, that we can actually influence them to bring the future to life, right? And so what I fundamentally believe is that in a world filled with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, we need to think of strategy and leadership and impact less like mechanics, where we're just taking the old blueprint and we're just making modifications, and more like designers, leaning into our discovery skills, leaning into our imagination skills, our ability to question differently, our ability to bring new things to life, our ability to form a hypothesis and then quickly go out and test it to gather evidence to see if that idea was in fact the right idea, or the idea that was going to create value in the way that we intended it. This is our superpower, and the world needs it more than ever. So this is an exciting place to be, and we're starting to see that the world is getting it. We're starting to see that design is actually starting to mean something to circles outside of the creative field. And you could take a look at some of the unicorns that have emerged from Silicon Valley in the last decade. Didn't exist 10 years ago. Now worth not just more than $1 billion, but these deca unicorns worth more than $10 billion have design or design founders at the heart of their organizations, using design not just to create products and services that meet people's needs, but actually to design the organizations themselves to be nimble, more flexible, and more robust. Right? So companies like WeWork reimagining an old idea of co-working to be a community. Now in over 25 countries, worth nearly $26 billion because of the belief of design. But this is not only where design lives. Design lives everywhere. And so part of what I hope happens in this conversation over the next 2 days is that you start to ask yourselves, what is our greater ambition? Where does the world need us? So I want to share with you some of the principles and practices of this new leadership model that I've been building over the last couple of years. And I would love to get your feedback and what resonates with you. And I guess I want to say, as a little spoiler alert, I'm not sure I'm going to share anything new with you that you're not already doing. But what I am hopeful of is that you will start to think of your role through a new lens. That you will start to push yourself to say, oh, I get it. My job is not just to execute what's been given to me. My job is to find a way to get at the table. My job is to help influence as early as possible the choices that we make as an organization, that we make as a community. So I believe we all have the ability to be these kind of leaders. And there's 4 parts to what I call this exponential leadership model. The first is we need futurists. We need futurists to be comfortable seeing bold possibilities, to imagine a world that doesn't quite exist, that doesn't have the evidence to back it up. We also need innovators to find a way to do it. The vision is one part, but actually giving it form and tangibility is a whole other set of skills. We need technologists that can actually build and blend the tools, the ones that are already out there and the ones that are coming at us fast. And most importantly, we need humanitarians to make sure that the choices that we are making positively serve people and the planet. This is the role of a leader of our time. And at the heart of all of these practices is design. Design can model what these practices are and amplify it in others. And I think that's the greatest opportunity, to be a multiplier of these new ways of working. So let's take a look at them in a bit more detail. This first notion, leader as futurist. What does that mean? I believe it means that you boldly and optimistically transform surprise into possibility. That you are comfortable thinking about ideas that have the premise to be true, but not necessarily the guarantee. And you're willing to put it out there for others to see. I think one great example is JFK, who actually coined the first phrase, the moonshot, right? Back in 1962, when he declared in front of Congress and the American people that we were going to put men on the moon in the next decade. And when he made that declaration, he didn't say, this is what it's going to cost, I know it's going to be guaranteed, this is when you can imagine that I'm going to ship it. He said, this is going to be hard, this is going to be long, this is going to cost a lot of money, this is going to take a lot of people, and we will make mistakes along the way. But that's not going to stop us from doing that. To dream boldly. And then to find ways to bring that future to life so that others can get on board. This is another one of my friends and colleagues who leads like a futurist. Kyle Nell was the executive director of innovation at Lowe's for many years, the hardware store. And as he would say, decidedly not a particularly sexy company, Lowe's. Anyone here work for Lowe's? Right? But he said, if I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. And for 2 years, Kyle made the most beautiful presentations to inspire the leadership team about their future. And every time they would leave those presentations, the leadership team would be like, great presentation, Kyle. That really got me going. And he would say, well, are we going to do it? Are we going to fund it? Like, no, we're not. But that was an amazing presentation. And he said, after a while, you know, I'm not here to make beautiful presentations. That's actually not why you hired me, right? You can find another design firm to make great presentations. I'm here to catalyze change. And he had this sort of do or die moment, and he was a renegade. He said, I'm just going to do it. And he hired a bunch of comic book illustrators and sci-fi writers and created the comic book of the future for Lowe's, which imagined having these autonomous robots serve as store concierges when you would get in to help customers navigate the overwhelmed complexity of the store. It's a big store. And he just put it on everybody's desk. He said, then the conversation changed. And within 9 months, which is like unheard of, there was a prototype of this idea in the San Jose store down at Lowe's. Because he knew it wasn't enough to just tantalize them with the dream. He had to build a handrail so that they could see themselves in the dream. And that's the power of leading like a futurist, to tap into your imagination and see those bold possibilities. And as I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking, where's there evidence where I have seen this happen, not just at the higher level, but across all levels? And I was taken back to the first year that I taught at the Design MBA program, where I was responsible for the opening class called Innovation Studio. So I got these students day one. And I would introduce a semester-long project that would give them the chance to practice these skills of imagining new futures. So in the very first class, back in 2010, we decided again to pick a decidedly unsexy company to work on to bring new ideas to life. So I partnered with AAA. Any AAA members here? Yeah? And again, my students thought I was nuts. They're like, you know, we signed the Design MBA program for innovation, right? I said, trust me, this is the best kind of project that we have. And one student group, this is again 8 years ago, reimagined AAA to be more than about cars and trip support. In fact, what they saw was that there was an opportunity because of the migration to cities and what was happening in the lives of younger people who were not buying cars to, in fact, create AAA equivalent for bikes. And they called it the Beacon Platform, which connected bikes with data and apps and services. Now, at this point, you're going, aha, Lisa, yeah, we get it. How imaginative is that? Again, I want to point you that this was 8 years ago. There was no such thing as a connected bike. There was no such thing as apps, connected apps for bikes. And here we are in 2018, and this is the new Uber, right? This is taking over every city. Scooters and bikes connected via app and data, 8 years ahead of its time. And I started to think through the pattern that every single time I had a class and a big challenge, there was at least one, if not all the student groups, imagining something whose time was too early. And because they were students, they weren't looking for funding, but my gosh, my students would be making a small fortune right now had they actually started a company like Motivate. They paid millions, tens of millions of dollars to get into this business. Another quick example, the next year I decided to have fun with the future of print media. Borders had just gone out of business. Amazon was in a tug-of-war with the publishers. Things were looking grim if you were in the print media business. And again, I had puzzled students going, does she know this is about the future? That is a dying business. But it's powerful to use constraints as a way to motivate you to think differently. So one group, after a lot of discovery work and iteration, decided that we need to bring print media to the customers and not force them to go to a store like Barnes & Noble, which were dying. And so they created the idea of an origami box, where you would send the print media a book or magazine with some other elements to make it interactive. So this was really interesting. They were kind of allowing the book and the content to meet the customers where they were. Again, 2011, not the era of Birchbox. So now if you think about it, fast forward to 2018, where are we? There's so many subscription boxes. There's actually a website to help you navigate all of the different subscription boxes that are available. Right? You need a subscription box for your subscription box. I literally saw 2 days ago an ad on the TV for a subscription box for dogs. I kid you not. Right? But the best part about it, this just made me laugh. The best part about it was that they were trying to tell us that the dog was so excited now when the postman came that they did not attack the postman, that this was the greatest moment in the dog's life, that they somehow got socialized. Right? My other favorite one is this one, the basic man box. We need the basic man box, okay? So again, if my students had just pursued this a little bit more, perhaps they would have been the category killer ahead of their time. So that's that first notion. You have to dream big and find ways to bring it to life, right? But we know the prototype is not where it ends, right? You have to find ways to continue to iterate and to continue to test that the idea has value. So leading like an innovator, what does that mean? I believe it means discovering new ideas through empathetic investigation and rigorous experimentation. Right? People like Sarah Blakely, she didn't start off as a futurist looking to disrupt the female hosiery category. And for those of you that don't know Sarah Blakely, she is the founder of Spanx. So we have Sarah to thank you for looking just a little bit better in our dresses and our pants. And what Sarah noticed as a salesperson selling, kid you not, fax machines, right, where she was required to wear pantyhose as part of the uniform. And what she noticed was that she really liked how the pantyhose at the top kind of kept her snug, but she did not like the look at the bottom. So she cut off the bottom part when she was going to dinner parties and started to ask her friends and family members if they did something similar. And next thing you know, she's trying to file a patent. She went to 7 different patent attorneys. All of them turned her down. She actually took out a book from the library to figure out how to file a patent attorney before she finally got one to take her case. She is a self-made billionaire that, for men in the room, is now entering the men's market. So we do not need to be left out of the Spanx category. But it's interesting that it's her hustle and perseverance that allowed her to bring this idea to life when others said it was impossible. Similar with Brian Chesky and Airbnb. Did not start to hospitality business. Started Airbnb to make rent because they could not find a job, he and Joe Gebbia. So interesting to see the difference. What do leaders as innovators do so well? Well, first of all, they question status quo. This is one of my absolute favorite books of all time about questioning status quo from the brilliant late artist Amy Krauss Rosenthal. And this book, called Duck Rabbit, is a story of 2 5-year-olds trying to figure out what this creature is. Okay, quick show of hands. How many people here think it's a duck? Wow. And how many people here think it's a rabbit? All right, more. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to use the evidence around them to question. So they say, like, these things coming out of the beak/ears are in water. And one kid says, oh, look, the duck is thirsty. And the other kid says, no, no, the rabbit is hot. Right? So they're trying to figure out. And what's beautiful is at the end of the book, they've done such a lovely job making their ideas explicit that each one has convinced the other that they were right. So one says, you know what, you've convinced me, I'm sure it's a duck. And they said, no, 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 it's absolutely a rabbit. And what we know about great designers is that they tend to have strong opinions loosely held. They come in with passion, but they look for evidence and they're willing to adjust. Most leaders who do not have this training have strong opinions strongly held. And they're in defending mode versus learning mode. So this is a great gift that we can give the rest of the world, to question productively and be willing to challenge assumptions. Right? Airbnb has done that magnificently. Testing the fundamental assumption that a stranger is willing to rent a couch, a house, a room in another stranger's apartment around the world. Right? What do they have to do to build enough trust in order to do that? Well, they went deep in understanding their core personas and customers on both sides. Right? They have a platform model where they need, first of all, renters willing to rent their house, willing to get a house, and rentees are willing to offer their house. And they knew if they did not intimately understand not just the travel behaviors of these people, but all behaviors of these people to see if they could actually crack the critical part of their business model. So they pursued relentless discovery of who these personas are. And they made it visible about how they create value along the value chain. So if you go to Airbnb's headquarters, what you will see very clearly in the epicenter are these two important learning journeys. These journey maps of how does a host family get on board to actually be comfortable renting their house, and how does a rentee find the property. And they want to make it visible for every single member of Airbnb what needs to happen in order to advance, to find themselves, whether they're IT, whether they're support, whether they're just maintenance of the organization in their core value creation system. So they're making it visible so that everybody knows, and they're color marked. This is what we're working on. Red, needs work. Green, we're good. Yellow, pending. So that everyone feels aligned in this process. They iterate to learn constantly. So when Airbnb a couple years ago went into the experience business, allowing hosts to actually become entrepreneurs, to celebrate their hometown by offering these local inspired entrepreneurs, they knew that it was another gamble. And they leaned into the testing process. And there's a picture of some of the early posters that they made to allow these early adopters to get their ideas out there quickly. And the ultimate belief was that they would create their own posters. But in the beginning, the most important thing they were testing was, would they buy an experience? Not, did they like the marketing? Would they buy the experience? So they lent their in-house design talent in order to give this experience life. We know from design that it is not a magic box. It's not an 8-ball like people say, right? Oh, you're a designer? Oh, I'm not creative. No, it's not about that. It's about having a discipline and having access to different tools. These are just a few that I teach in my class that are in one of my books, Design a Better Business, to shed the light on the fact that this doesn't have to be a mystery, that we can go deep in empathy to understand our different personas, that we can map out what their journeys are to understand their high points and their low points, that we can understand the job to be done, not just functional job, but social and emotional job. We can all brainstorm and have new ideas given the right prompts. We can understand business model design through the lens of a system and prototyping and ideating. And we can use a discipline to experiment. These are just some. You have your own toolkit. My point is, don't hide it. Share it. Help others understand your toolkit so that they can feel more comfortable taking some risks. This is just a picture of some of my students. One of the very first things that we do in Innovation Studio, right? Imagine this, it's your first day of your MBA. Like, we're gonna learn how to draw. Why? To give their ideas form, to give them the fastest way to test them, to give them the ability to communicate in ways that other people can hear, right? So get to that whiteboard, draw it out, help people, and then teach them how to do it too. All right, the third I want to talk about is leader as technologist. Why is this so important? A leader as a technologist is someone that understands and anticipates where technology is going so that they can get the benefit of riding this trend. Now notice I didn't say a technologist is someone that has a PhD in AI and digital biology. I am not saying that you need to run off and get a technical degree. I am saying that you have to be comfortable understanding where technology is going so that you can have conversations that bring them in and that you can get the benefit of where it's going. And many times what I say to more senior leaders is, find a younger buddy and shadow them for the day and understand how technology is influencing all aspects of our life. So these are just a couple of pictures of leaders as technologists. Ray Kurzweil, that famously wrote "The Singularity is Near" and discovered the law of accelerating returns, realizing that Moore's law actually predated when Moore's law coined it 4 decades ago, that it actually dates back to the Industrial Revolution, where the price performance of new technology is on a curve, doubling, not linear. And we are wired to think linear, but we need to think exponentially. Or Anne Wojcicki, who was actually a financial analyst in biology, who realized that the mapping of the genome, which ended in 2000, was going to lead to an entirely new category of consumer genomics. and in 2005 started 23andMe, recognizing that at some point it would be affordable because of what we know of the exponential curve, where performance doubles and price decreases, power increases, all of us would have the ability to map our genome in an affordable way. So she understood that there was a disruption point called the finishing of the genome. And even though at that point it was like $100,000 to map your genome, that's not where it was going to stay. We had to project it out into the future. And I love this quote from Astro Teller. The captain of moonshots at X, used to be called Google X, where they were the ones that pioneered the autonomous cars, Project Loon, which is putting a hot air balloon in space to try to give connectivity to remote areas, contact lenses that will detect your blood sugar level if you have diabetes. And I love this quote. He said, when we come up against things that we can't forecast, like numbers, right? We assume that if we can't imagine it, we assume it's not possible, right? This is the limitation when you haven't been practiced in imagination. When you haven't been practiced is saying, I know you think that's not possible, but what if it is? Where could it go? And that you can use your understanding of technology to help others see that, in fact, yes, it is possible. We can no longer say it's not possible. That's not an excuse. We need to imagine it as if it could. So that then we can find the right partners in order to bring it to life. Technology, as we know, is not just about the technology we can build. It's about the technologists and the designers that bring it to life. And here again, I want to suggest that designers have an opportunity to meaningfully influence the conversation about technology and its impact on society. So not only do we need to get more diversity into the programming and STEM fields, but we need designers to raise their hands to say, you know what, that data set is not representative of the kind of people that could benefit from it. We need to slow down and make sure that from the very beginning, we are designing with great intention. And we are leaning into opportunities to bring everyone on board. Because if this, at the beginning of this exponential curve, it's primarily fueled by men of one ethnicity, that also escalates. So we need to make sure that as a new technology is coming forward, that there is diversity at the table about how those technologies are going to continue to get developed. The final one I want to talk about, which is one that's probably closest to my heart, is leader as humanitarian. And here again, I'm redefining humanitarian not to be someone who steps up after the crisis. I'm saying someone who proactively makes choices, using what they know about technology, using their gifts to imagine new worlds, using their ability to prototype and bring things to life, to serve people and the planet. And again, here are just a few examples of leader as technologists. Melinda Gates, who has leaned heavily into design and design thinking as a mechanism for change around the world. Jennifer Dulski, former president of Change.org, now head of groups at Facebook, just wrote a beautiful book called Purposeful, talking about how all of us can ignite movements if we lean into our personal narrative and use technology to share it with the world, that we can all influence change, certainly at the community level, if not national level, if not global level. So this is our opportunity. Part of it is understanding where value comes from and using our design skills to reimagine, in some ways, new business models. This is one of my favorite companies of all time. It's called Active for Good. They were a startup in the Singularity University accelerator. And the founders actually came from a place of designing high nutritious, ready-to-use bars in developing areas to help children that were facing acute malnutrition. That they could ship these bars and that they could give the children the calories that they need to sustain them while they were in crisis. And they were ready to move on to a new venture. And they were batting about ideas, and on the radio, they heard a story about a megachurch in Southern California that was facing the opposite problem. They were having an obesity problem, a health problem. They were not exercising enough. And so the church decided that they were going to come together as a community to do something about it. And they started these like mall walks and morning walks. And together, this megachurch lost 200,000 pounds. And Troy and Joe listened to this story, and they said, yeah, that's great, but what, because they had the lens of where they came from, they said, what a shame. They shouldn't have lost those pounds. They should have donated those pounds. And they said, yeah, that'd be great. And then they pause, and they're like, wait, could we do that? How could we do that? And what they did was, which I thought was so genius, they used existing distribution channels and technology to create a business that would connect populations that desperately needed to lose calories through fitness challenges with populations that needed those calories. And so they created this opportunity for organizations to have their own fitness challenges, aggregate the calories lost, which you just need an iPhone or Fitbit to do, and then they would translate them into the monobars that would then get distributed around the world. So we did one a few months ago at Singularity University where we had a headquarter challenge, and we engaged 50 chapters around the world. And together, we lost like 1 million calories that got translated into these bars. So what I love about this is, again, they didn't design a new product, they designed a new system. And in fact, they designed a new currency, if you think about it. The currency of calories, first ever calorie marketplace. Right? So it's about reimagining business models. And what's exciting is that traditional organizations are starting to see that if they make choices that benefit people and the planet, it doesn't have to come at the sacrifice of profit. In fact, it can help them grow even more. And Fortune has this great yearly Companies Doing Well by Doing Good edition that's worth studying cover to cover, because that's your ammo to go back to your organizations to say, look, there's an opportunity for us to think through the lens of both and. We had the opportunity to ignite impact. These are heroes of mine, these incredible survivors of the Marjorie Douglas school shooting that took their tragedy and used it to ignite impact. To say, we are not going to allow what happened to us be the future of children everywhere. And not only did they create one of the largest marches on behalf of gun control, but they are not done with their fight. They're taking their levers of influence and they're going around the country with the primary goal of trying to get young people registered to vote with just a QR code. I actually saw them last night on the Daily Show. They are working tirelessly to make sure that their youth is influencing the future. Emma Gonzalez here in the front said, we will not go down in history books as just another mass shooting. We will go down in history books to say, never again. This will not be the future. That we were the ones that turned action into law. These are designers of better futures. I love this quote from Satya Nadella, who is, I think, one of the most exciting designers of the time. He's the CEO of Microsoft. And when he took over Microsoft 3 years ago, he recognized that the key to Microsoft gaining market dominance again was not about creating another product. It was rediscovering their soul through empathy. He said, we need to understand that if we are empathetic with each other, we can understand why people work here and how to bring out their best selves. And that will help us create products for our customers that empower them to do their work. He said, we need to turn our culture from being a learn-it-all, where we're defending our ideas, a know-it-all, to a learn-it-all, where we are questioning, we are listening to each other, and we are making this the best place to work to have impact for the things that you care about. We have the ability to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. This is an incredible example of 2 former students of mine that were just asked to go to Iraq to work with the World Food Program to help them design new ways of distributing food to refugee camps, which was debilitated by the old model of getting outdated records on a flash drive. They would have to drive to then upload them, and the food would never get to the people that needed to. So they partnered with 2 blockchain companies in order to reimagine and visualize how to rethink food distribution. There are 2 pilots that are already going on within a month of this initial ideation to go to 8 million people in need in food in Iraq alone. Think of what we could do around the world. So we have this gift to give to the world. Why am I so excited about this? Because you are these leaders. Truly you are. You optimistically transform surprise and uncertainty into bold possibilities every day. That's what you do. You discover new ideas through investigation, creative ideation, and rigorous experimentation. You understand and anticipate the technologies that are coming your way, and you make sure that they are being used in equitable ways. And you improve the lives of people that you touch, and for society as a whole. That's, I think, what design can bring to the table. That's what happens when we look at design through the lens of leadership, not just for our organizations, but for the world as a whole. So that's what makes me excited about being here. You are the future shapers. So ask yourself, how do I bring that forward in more ambitious ways? How do I bring my most authentic self forward with my tools, my mindsets, my ideas? That's what's possible. The world needs more designers. That's just a fact. We need you. And we need you to share your gifts with others. So with that, I want to say thank you. It's so exciting to be with you, to help design the future of LeadCon, and to be a partner with you as you go off and design better futures. So thank you.
So that was amazing. Thank you. Wow, a couple things that I really took note of. I loved how you framed the idea of, design being at the heart of the business, not just the services, but the companies itself. And it's no longer like the Googles, the Apples, the Nikes, and there was some really amazing stuff going on. I love that notion of JFK, inventing the moonshot. I'm going to put that into something somewhere. It's great. An important takeaway I thought was awesome is help others understand your toolkit. Don't hide it, share it. Design with great intention. I thought that was amazing. So as we go into the next 2 days, how should we be thinking about all of this? I'll lead you with that question.
It's a great question. I mean, I love the whole format of this conference, which is to be in conversation with each other, to have a cohort to learn with. And I just want to encourage you to share what you're doing. I mean, we tend to be a little modest, right? Oh, I'm working on this, but it's nothing. No, it's something, right? And if you can share what you're doing with others, then they can tell your story. And at the end of the day, stories are the most exponential technology that we have, right? If we understand stories and the impact, and we understand them not from the technical standpoint, but from how they impacted people, and we can add character, that's how we're going to learn, and that's how we're going to be able to share it with others.
That's a very concise answer. I appreciate that. You talked a lot about how designers are most resourceful. What talents are we underutilizing?
That's a great question. I do think we're often underutilizing our ability to visualize things and to wait until it's perfect. Well, I'm just going to go sketch it here in my little journal, and I'm going to keep sketching it. And when I finally get to a better point of what it looks like, then I'll show it. No, show it early. Get them on board, get their feedback, and even encourage them, to actually do it themselves, to join you up at the whiteboard. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I think designers could do more intentionally, in general, it's a big generalization, is to build out their networks and to have diverse voices and talents that are not just part of their ecosystem, but are bought into the work that they're doing. Again, this is the sharing and being able to bring them in when needed. So I actually taught a course at Stanford called Networking by Design. And it was really powerful, particularly for designers. And again, a generalization, but certainly a lot of my students are actually quite introverted, number one. And number two, had this belief that networking was about collecting business cards. Right? I got to go to a cocktail party and mingle. Well, first of all, who has business cards anymore? I mean, you may. So, but that's not the victory, right? Or particularly for some of the younger students, they thought, well, I am very networked. I've got a lot of followers on Instagram, very networked, and I'm like, okay, that is some form of influence. But actually thinking about who is in my sphere of influence? How do I keep up with my ties? If I were to ask someone I went to design school with to help on this project, are they willing to take my call? Would they, what's an offer I can make to them? So I think paying attention to who is in our sphere of connection, making sure that they're not too siloed, and then just paying attention to how we bring them in so that they can help us make the ideas better and, again, help us amplify the ideas.
Lisa, can I build on that? What are some strategies that you could share right now I know I'm a pretty significant introvert, believe that if you may, but just what are some strategies that we can use to network better or bring people into our sphere?
Yeah. It's a great question. Well, first of all, again, you have a phenomenal superpower, which is called questioning, right? Curiosity. And if we just go in with the mode that, wow, I'm excited to learn about somebody else, and then build on that and build a conversation from that, it can be so powerful. I want to share a quick story. So 2 or 3 years into teaching Innovation Studio, we were doing a project on the future of money, big topic, and 2 of my students, who are just unbelievably talented and great hustlers, they got their way into a very expensive ticket to Money 2020 to a Money 2020 conference in Vegas. Okay, I don't know how they did it, but like each ticket was like $5,000, and they're like, we're students, and so they paid for their flight there. And this is one of my students, and she's on the flight there, and she starts talking to the person next to her, and they start talking about the design of the console of the Virgin thing. Oh, I like this, I like that. P.S. Turns out he's one of the keynote speakers, invites her to be his VIP at his talk and at the dinner, and so, you know, I think it was just because she opened up the conversation with a question, and also was willing to experiment. So this duo, again, I made them share their experience with the class. When they went to the opening reception, they were prototyping where to stand in order to have the best conversations. Do we stand near the bar? Let's try that for 10 minutes and see what. Do we stand near the food? What happens when we do that? Do we stand near the exit? What happens when we do that? And so they were really methodical about trying to figure out how to maximize the best. You know, I don't think that you should sort of over-process it, but I think just remembering that at the core, humans are curious about other humans, and you have the opportunity to learn about what they're doing and then build on it. I think that's great. The one other thing I would say on it that I started to teach as a practice is this notion of following up, which again was, for some of my younger students, a novel concept, right? Like, if somebody meets with you and they share ideas or they help you, follow up with them and let them know about how their advice helped you or visualize something. And so, for example, another example is that I would have a lot of speakers come into my class. I had no money to give them, but I would ask the students to reflect on what they learned, and then I would summarize all of the learning, and I would give them back. And also my students, we kept a design journal, and they would often sketch out what they learned, and I would take pictures of that and send it to the speaker. Because at the end of the day, how many best-selling authors are getting sketch notes of their talk? What do you think they are remembering? Those sketch notes. Whose call do you think that they're going to take after they got that beautiful sketch note? Theirs, right? So I think there's little ways that we can work if we just break down this mental block that, like, networking is about, you know, collecting contacts.
Fantastic. Those are really great insights. Actually, I think that's a good note to end on. I know we're a little bit over, but I want to make sure that you get to your groups and do your cohort. Quick applause for Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.